Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This could happen again, and there might not be people there that can stop him.
Demanding more action against repeat offenders after a bus attack in Abbotsford. Also,
we're seeing the tip of the iceberg right now of labor shortages. It's going to get worse.
Older than ever, how Canada's aging population will create big challenges in the next decade. And with summer upon us, so too is the E. coli threat that closes our beaches, seeking solutions to a poopy problem.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. We begin tonight with questions around a terrifying bus attack in Abbotsford. The accused faces a number of charges that only add to an incredibly long list of past offenses. As John Hernandez reports, there are growing calls to do something about repeat offenders. And a warning, some of the video used in this report may be upsetting.
It was just a few days ago when this footage was taken, showing a man on an Abbotsford bus appear to assault numerous passengers before he was pinned down.
We threw him to the ground near the back doors, and we held him there for a bit.
The suspect was later arrested and charged, with victims later finding out he appeared to have a long criminal history.
I'm worried that this situation might happen again. That was in my immediate thought when we found out he was released on bail. Is that this could happen again, and there might not be people there that can stop him. He's going to seriously injure someone.
The incident now fueling an ongoing debate on how to fix BC's long list of repeat offenders.
If we were doing something right as a health and justice system, that person wouldn't have attacked the person on the bus. 13
urban mayors have raised concerns to the province. There are at least 204 prolific offenders in BC's urban areas.
Serious concern with repeat and prolific offenders who seem to just keep cycling through the justice system with no off-ramp to any kind of better opportunity or better life. From the streets to the courts to prison and back again.
Concerns that made their way to the halls of the legislature on Tuesday.
When will the Attorney General end the revolving door and prioritize safety in our communities?
Issues are more complicated than the member represents.
But experts say it's not fair to point the finger at those in power, and the answer is far more complex than just stricter penalties.
When you try to look at how and why these offenses have taken place, you keep coming back to some familiar terrain, and that terrain has to do with mental illness, has to do with substance abuse.
The Mayor's Caucus says it's advocating for more health services, including complex care for repeat offenders.
One of the things that we're pushing for is kind of a no wrong off-ramp approach. Better integration between the healthcare system and the justice system.
Supports the province says are coming in hopes of keeping crimes like this from happening again and again. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police have released security footage of a violent robbery at a Gucci store in downtown Vancouver. It shows two masked men entering the shop in December. One suspect shoots bear spray in the face of a staff member. Both can then be seen ransacking the store. Police say the suspects stole around $20,000 in merchandise, and the security guard was left incapacitated by the attack. Security footage here captured their faces as they left. Anyone who recognizes these men is asked to contact Vancouver police. Well, the return of cruise ships is good for local businesses, but some say not so good for the environment. And today in Vancouver, a protest blaming Transport Canada for not cleaning up the industry. As Michelle Gassoub reports, demonstrators say BC has become a dumping ground for cruise ship waste.
Today, 3 cruise ships pulling into Canada Place, just some of the tourists that will add $2.7 billion to BC's economy this year. But not everyone is welcoming that business.
We are the toilet bowl, so we can expect 32 billion litres of dumping along BC's coast for a cruise ship season that was like the 2019 season.
No more cruise poop!
These protesters say the federal government missed an opportunity during the pandemic to bring in stricter environmental regulations like those south of the border.
In Washington State, through all of Puget Sound up to the Canadian border, there is a no discharge zone. So cruise ships legally have to hold their waste until they get to outside that jurisdiction. Well, that's us. We are the place that is the low water mark, that's the spot they can flush their tanks.
So what exactly are cruise ships dumping into BC waters? There's sewage and grey water, waste from the ship's plumbing and kitchens. And then there's wash water. It's generated by cruise ship scrubbers. They pull in seawater to filter sulfur dioxide pollutants out of marine fuel. The output from scrubbers is so acidic, the tools are banned in California. Just this month, Transport Canada did introduce some new measures limiting the amount of sewage and grey water that could be dumped in BC waters. But right now, those new rules aren't regulations. That means that they're still entirely voluntary. Experts say even when diluted, the waste is dangerous.
Then you dilute it enough so it will not harm the ecosystem or the surrounding. However, if you are talking about huge amounts, and these amounts like going into the system constantly, sooner or later, it will become a problem.
No one from the cruise industry was available to speak today, and while right now they're focused on keeping COVID off of ships, they may not be able to fend off the activists for much longer, or the stricter federal regulations. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
And coming up in the show, we'll tackle another sewage problem. When heavy rains hit cities, pipes overrun and drain right into our ocean, lakes, and rivers. We're going to break down the nuanced and multi-tiered solutions to a complicated system. Okay, BC is pursuing a forestry revenue sharing model with First Nations.
We are moving away from the short-term transactional approach in the past towards a new fiscal relationship. One that recognizes, respects, and supports Indigenous peoples' rights to self-determination.
The province says the plan will more than double the forestry revenue shared with First Nations and will mean an immediate increase of $63 million this year. Under the existing program, First Nations received $58.8 million in the 2021 fiscal year. The complete plan will take at least 2 years to co-develop. It's a move to meet commitments laid out in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Meanwhile, BC's Forests Minister says she's been getting harassing phone calls after some old-growth logging protesters reportedly published her phone number online.
It's a very small group of people who are using this tactic, and I don't believe it's a very positive tactic to use. I think that you can deal with people in a lot better way and a lot more work can be done.
It's not exactly clear who put out Conroy's phone number. The group Save Old Growth has been staging road blockades around the province, demanding a public meeting with Conroy. And in December, the minister was hurt after someone attacked her while she was walking home from the legislature. A Vancouver software company is making it their policy to include salary information on job openings. It says the move is not only an honest way, but a way to entice talent as well. That contrasts to the experience of one job seeker who unknowingly accepted a low offer because, as Leanne Young shows us, salary information can be kept secret in this country.
Michelle Hamilly has regrets about her first job in Canada. The IT project manager from Lebanon accepted a lowball job offer without knowing it.
By the time you get the offer, it's like, I invested so much time. I'll go in and then afterwards I'll show them how good I am and then they'll look at it, but that rarely happens.
She says knowing the salary range before she applied would have given her more bargaining power.
I probably would not have applied, or if I applied, asked for more.
Hamilly is among a growing number of Canadians demanding pay transparency laws, much like Colorado, or starting next month in New York City, where all job postings will require listed pay scales.
That has been shown to close the gender and racial wage gap in the sense that people don't ask for a salary that's lower than the wage band and they know what the maximum could be.
In Canada, other than public sector and unionized jobs, most salary information remains a secret. Ontario passed pay transparency laws in 2018, but the next progressive Conservative government delayed its implementation indefinitely. BC is now considering legislation.
What was the response like when you guys first implemented pay transparency?
This Vancouver software company decided to start posting its wages last year. They say it's paid off.
by creating a trusting relationship between our employees and the business. And we've seen a huge uptick in the number of candidates that have applied.
Many of their applicants are younger and like the clarity around salaries. They're part of a growing movement online.
My first salary was $42K.
My second executive assistant job was for a way bigger company. I was making $58.
For Hamilly, she hopes it won't be left up to individuals to share salaries.
There is zero reason for that not to be disclosed. The same way it's working in the public sector, there's no reason it shouldn't work for the private sector.
Openness that could help level the playing field. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC Ferries has cancelled all sailings to Haida Gwaii until at least Friday morning. It's the result of COVID-19 illness and related staffing shortages. Service between Prince Rupert and Haida Gwaii was stopped on Sunday because there wasn't enough crew to safely operate the ferry, Northern Adventure. Other routes between Bella Bella and Port Hardy today and tomorrow are also impacted. BC Ferries says the Northern Adventure is using limited crew to ship essential cargo to Haida Gwaii. As for stranded passengers, flights are being chartered between Skidegate and Prince Rupert. Well, voters in the riding of Vancouver-Kilchenna are choosing a new MLA in a by-election on Saturday. BC Liberal Kevin Falcon was elected as the party's leader in February. He's trying to win back a seat in the legislature, and his main rival is the NDP's Jeanette Ash, a political scientist married to Vancouver's mayor. Here's what a few voters are thinking about today.
It didn't seem to be anything anybody was running on, if you know what I mean. It was just a fill-in election.
I'm impressed, reluctantly. Keeping the right out, whatever.
I had a teacher one time tell me not to vote for anything if you don't have like a well-rounded opinion, and I honestly just take that.
Conservative. I don't try to know. That's all.
I didn't even know what the election was about.
Again, that election is happening on Saturday. Well, after almost 4 months of being closed for repairs, the Stanley Park Seawall has now reopened. The stretch between 3rd Beach and the Lionsgate Bridge had been closed to the public since January 7th. That's when ultra-high tides, extreme winds, and a storm surge severely damaged the walkway. The Vancouver Park Board says crews have worked tirelessly to reopen the seawall so people can enjoy it in time for the warmer months. There are still minor repairs to do, but this will not impact access to the pathway. With the final section reopened, staff can now focus on repairing the Kitsilano Pool, Jericho Pier, and other areas damaged by the storm. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Joe, the sun is just like bright on you. It's shining. It looks amazing.
It feels amazing, Anita. Yeah, it's still chilly out there, but if you can get yourself set up and get those rays right on the face, it really is nice, and it's starting to feel warm as we head into late April. The sun's angle, that is. Temperatures, not so much. It's quite the contrast to what's happening in other parts of the province. Let me show you the satellite and radar from the northeast, where we are seeing heavy snowfall right now through Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, Fort Nelson, all looking at that heavy snow accumulating tonight. Also, keep your eyes on Prince George, a second night in a row with thunderstorms in the region. Now, it's all thanks to that swirling upper level low that has been our story since last Sunday, and it is driving snow back in from Alberta. So that's the snowfall warning in place. Fort Nelson down through Dawson Creek and hopping over the Rockies as well. 5 to 10 centimeters tonight, double that through the day tomorrow. Down across the south coast, again, influenced by the same system. So that's why we're seeing the cooler temperatures just hitting 11 today. And you can see those isolated showers crossing Vancouver Island. And we saw some hail this morning in Metro Vancouver, and those afternoon cumulus that seem like they've really been our story for the month of April, which signal all that instability. Just wanted to show you the temperatures tonight because it is going to be yet another cool start to your Thursday, dropping down around 3-4 degrees for your 7 a.m. forecast. So, Anita, I know you didn't quite put the parka away. That was probably a good idea. But I have some mid-teen temperatures to show you later on.
Okay, yeah, it's sitting on my desk right now. So,
okay, good.
Okay. Thanks,
call.
Joe.
You're welcome.
The Vancouver Whitecaps are bringing a homegrown northern flair to their roster by picking the first athlete from the Yukon to play professional soccer in Canada. The CBC's George Morados introduces us to 18-year-old Joe Hansen. He's a forward selected for the Caps reserve team.
It's game day.
Joe and his teammates warm up. This is a big match for them, the first home game of the season. It's also a big step, the next, in what's been a long journey for this teenager from the Yukon. Joe has been playing soccer since around the same time he learned to walk. Here he is at just 19 months. Joe's passion for the sport is in his DNA. His dad, Jake, is American. When he was Joe's age, he was turning heads at the collegiate level. At one point, even scouted for the U.S. national team.
But, he chose to have kids at a young age and, start a family, which I'm very grateful for, because now I get to take his dream and kind of live with that.
Back at Swangard, it's the 77th minute when Joe gets the call. He's going in, about to take the pitch at a level his dad never got to. Cheering him on, 20 or so Yukoners, friends, family of course, and young soccer players from the territory, in the stands to witness this moment.
I guess he's starting to pave a path for everyone following him, which is pretty incredible, and it's pretty inspiring to see that you are able to do it from the Yukon,
And then, on the final play of regulation, after the game, high fives and autographs. Joe wants to keep developing within the Whitecaps.
He has the capacity to make the player next to him better because he is always at service of the other players, and so to play in a professional level and in a team like the Whitecaps is very important.
Hansen wants to one day play for the national team and then take his game to Europe. For now, he's still wrapping his head around the fact he gets to be a pro, playing the game he loves.
I want to say it's a new normal, but it's still good. I'm still getting used to it.
George Moratis, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, that's it for the Canucks. Vancouver is now officially eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. They comfortably beat the Seattle Kraken 5-3 last night. Quinn Hughes here scoring his 8th goal of the season. But the Canucks' fate wasn't entirely in their hands. While they needed to win their final 3 games of the season, they needed the Dallas Stars to lose all of theirs, and Dallas won instead, leaving the Canucks to wait until next season.
This offseason is going to be a really interesting one for the Vancouver Canucks because you have forward progress. You saw how they could beat some of the best teams, even though there is optimism with the second half of the season and the Boudreau bump, as we call it. Will there be some big changes in Vancouver nonetheless because they still missed out in the playoffs? There is optimism, but you do wonder, will there be some surgery with this roster? And that's the big question heading into the offseason.
The Stanley Cup playoffs start on Monday. You'll be able to watch many of those games right here on CBC. That does mean, though, that our newscasts may not be on television at 6 p.m., but you can always find them online at that time. With Canada already in the grips of a labour shortage, there's a warning tonight of more trouble ahead for the Canadian workforce. New data from Stats Canada shows a coming tidal wave of retirees, with the working age population now older than it's ever been. According to the 2021 census, more than 1 in 5 Canadians of working age are now 55 to 64 and approaching retirement. The big problem, there is no easy fix to fill that void. There just aren't enough younger people entering the workforce. And as Carolyn Dunn explains, that's only one of the challenges Canada is facing with an aging population.
Canada's looming retirement crisis is a building worry for the construction industry. In the next decade, more than 20% of the construction workforce will retire.
You lose someone with that knowledge and you don't necessarily have, kids coming in to replace, it's going to be a major problem.
Immigration may help, but it's not likely enough to fill the skilled worker gap expected across construction and other fields.
There are very large implications of this situation, and it is certainly one factor explaining the current labor shortages that Canada is experiencing.
And it's not just the workforce aging. The overall population is too. There are now more than 7 million Canadians over 65 and all the worries that come with that.
What you really need is home care that counts.
I have a 92
year-old aunt that I am taking care of. And I don't think the government realizes the demands that it puts on people.
Carol Keene's solution is to live independently now, but she chose a condo with an attached long-term care facility should she need it in the future.
Your life can change at the next doctor appointment. So then knowing that, I know that this is right here. It takes away the anxiety of thinking, what's going to happen to me when I get old?
And no surprise, there's already a lengthy waiting list for the government-subsidized accommodations.
So the demand is ever increasing as our population ages, as now the baby boomers are coming to that point where they're ready to retire and looking for different lifestyle choices, maybe requiring some level of care.
Finding ways to fill the economic, health, and societal gaps created by an aging population is complicated and necessary. We are literally not getting any younger. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
BC is seeing a surge in the number of new apartment buildings, according to the new census data. Growth in the number of apartment buildings with 5 or more stories has far outpaced other types of housing. These apartments make up a total of 10.9% of all homes in BC. That's up from 9.4% in 2016. Despite that, experts say demand for housing is still outpacing supply. According to Andy Yan, director of the City program at SFU, young people in BC will continue to find it hard to climb the property ladder, in large part due to land, space, and price. And for the first time in this country, we're getting new data on how Canadians identify themselves. The latest census has shed light on the number of transgender and non-binary people in the country. And it turns out Victoria leads the way with 0.75% identifying as one of the two. As Balpuri reports, reaction from the LGBTQ community is mixed.
It was a milestone moment. An Indigenous two-spirit couple from Edmonton won the reality show, The Amazing Race Canada. 3 years later, they're celebrating another victory.
Seeing, gender diverse people being included in the census, again, it's some sort of wow, this is pretty cool.
For the first time, Canada's survey of its population includes the number of people who are transgender or non-binary.
It's really important to start collecting that information because then we can start targeting specific resources towards that population and their health needs.
The 2021 census took a snapshot of Canadians 15 and older. Out of 30.5 million people, just over 100,000 identified as transgender or non-binary. That's 0.33% of the population, or 1 in 300.
I wish that I could congratulate Statistics Canada for measuring my community, but they haven't done it correctly.
Adrian Smith identifies as a non-binary trans person and was upset by the census line of questioning.
When I got the survey, I was horrified. What they asked is what your sex assignment is at birth, which is a particularly dehumanizing question for trans people, to have to tell the government who you're not.
The second question was about gender. Respondents could choose male, female, or fill in the blank under other. There was concern that language wasn't inclusive. Still, the data collected is something LGBTQ advocates have wanted for years.
I think it's going to help us really kind of cross-examine where are the gaps in terms of employment, healthcare, education. It's just going to allow us to give so much more nuance to what the lived experience is of people from a gender diverse community.
There's hope. The latest census is just the first historic step to make the data more inclusive. Balpuri, CBC News, Vancouver.
The list of beaches closed in the summer grows as the season lengthens. But one thing makes the situation much worse: storms and sewage discharge. We break down a poopy problem and what might be done about it next. Welcome to our commercial-free live stream. Well, Tantramar Marsh in New Brunswick is known for some unique wildlife sightings, but inside the marshlands are intricate designs carved into the grasses and wetlands that can't really be seen from the ground. So CBC reporter Shane Fowler took to the sky to show us from above.
So right now we're in the Tantramar National Wildlife Area,
which is right in the Tantramar Marshes on the border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. This is a man-made habitat, and as such, it doesn't function the same as a natural wetland. Probably looks very bizarre from the air. Guaranteed no aliens were involved in those. Hi, I'm Gary Donaldson. I'm the manager of protected areas and stewardship for the Atlantic region of the Canadian Wildlife Service. So there's kind of two structures that you'll see. One is these big circular donut-shaped things, or crop circle-like structures, and those are really to provide safe nesting habitat. So predators that are lurking around in the vegetation in the marsh might not be as inclined to swim across to the little center of the donut there. Another structure are what we call these zipper cuts, and so they're like channels through the wetland, but they're zigzag. And what those do is provide a lot of corners so that the waterfowl can sort of stay hidden from anything it doesn't, feel comfortable exposing itself to. Admittedly, we do a little bit of experimentation to try to figure out what the wildlife will respond to, and what works in one marsh might not work in another marsh, depending on the species composition, that sort of thing. We've been doing this for years, and again, it's a learning experience. And when we first started putting wetlands here in the Tantramar Marsh, we used a few techniques that we definitely don't use anymore. Those might involve dynamite and explosives. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but didn't quite do the job.
Okay, every summer we like to let you know when a major beach is closed, and a lot of times those waters are closed because of one issue, an E. coli warning. What's created this situation doesn't come with easy answers. Yute Lee is looking at the problem of sewage in our waters in this latest About Here.
Every year, cities across Canada dump sewage-contaminated water into nature. We're talking billions and billions of liters. So the subject of this video is quite simple. How do we stop doing that? English Bay Beach is one of the busiest beaches in Vancouver. On a sunny day, it's teeming with people. But last summer, it was closed for swimming because the water here was also teeming with something else. E. coli. From sewage. And this is a pretty common occurrence. Almost every year, beaches, lakes, and other water bodies are closed to swimming across Canada because there is fecal matter mixed into the water, our poop. So let's start with this question. How did that poop get there? Well, it's because of something called the combined sewer and stormwater system. Let me explain how it works. When you flush your stuff, it flows into a network of sewage pipes that lead to a sewage treatment plant, where it's cleaned and treated before the remaining water is dumped into the ocean. Pretty straightforward, right? But in a combined sewer and stormwater system, sewage isn't the only thing that goes into those pipes. There's also stormwater. When it rains, all that water has to go somewhere, and when it hits a hard surface like asphalt, glass, or concrete, all those droplets pool together, creating a stream of water called stormwater. In a combined system, that stormwater also flows into our sewage pipes. Just like our sewage, it flows to the sewage treatment plant to be cleaned and treated. And this is where we find the root of this problem. The amount of sewage flowing in a city at any given time is pretty consistent, but the amount of rainwater a city receives fluctuates wildly. So when there's a bad rainstorm, there ends up being way too much water flowing through our pipes for the sewage treatment plant to handle. And the result? All the excess stormwater and sewage combo overflows into a nearby water body, whether it's a stream, lake, or beach. This combined system has historically been the system of choice in older cities across North America, which means this problem is pretty much everywhere. In 2017, over 167 billion, yes, billion liters of combined sewage and stormwater leaked into water bodies across Canada, in every province except for PEI, Newfoundland, and Saskatchewan. So, how do we stop doing that? How do we get our sewage and stormwater management to act together? Well, there are many solutions, but they roughly fall into two categories: gray infrastructure and green infrastructure. So under gray infrastructure, we have more heavy-duty approaches to dealing with stormwater. One solution that falls under this category is to store this water temporarily. That's the case in Tokyo, where the city has constructed enormous underground caves that hold excess stormwater during typhoons. But even with these large caves, there are still larger storms that occasionally overwhelm the city's sewage system. Another popular solution is to completely separate stormwater and sewage into two different pipe networks. That way, sewage can be taken to sewage treatment plants, while stormwater can just flow out into the ocean. Sounds simple enough, right? But that's until you actually do it. You have to remember that these pipes are underground, most of them beneath our roads. So to separate them, you first need to tear up the road to get to those pipes and replace them. Rinse and repeat that for every street that has a combined pipe, and that quickly adds up to a massive project. It's hard to convey just how massive it is, but I'd like to try by showing you this map of sewage pipes in Vancouver. The government here has been working to separate out its sewage pipes since the 70s. In green are the pipes they have separated from stormwater, and in red are the pipes they have left. Every red line here represents a pipe that has to be separated by tearing up the street and replacing the pipes. Finishing this job won't take years, it will take decades. There's another thing I need to mention here. Separating pipes is not a perfect solution. Stormwater isn't sewage, but it's definitely not clean water either. As it flows off buildings and through the streets, it picks up pollutants and other random garbage. So it's probably not a great idea to discharge that water directly into natural water bodies without some sort of treatment first. Then we have green infrastructure. These are projects that prevent stormwater from going into a pipe in the first place by having it follow a more natural process. Out in the wild, there are no pipes. Instead, rain is absorbed into the ground or pooled into streams and rivers that flow out into lakes and oceans. Green infrastructure solutions try to mimic that process in an urban area. This could include bioswales, green roofs, or other permeable spaces that collect and absorb rainwater. It can even be as simple as planting more trees. It turns out trees are actually really good at soaking up water with their leaves and roots. But green infrastructure projects can also be quite ambitious. One of my favorite solutions involves replacing stormwater pipes with their more natural counterparts, rivers and streams. In Seoul, Korea, an old river that was once covered up and diverted into pipes was recently restored back into a river, the Cheonggyecheon River. It now holds more stormwater than the pipes it replaced, while providing a habitat for animals and a park for human beings. But even this approach isn't perfect. Green infrastructure doesn't make sense everywhere, and the science behind it is admittedly less predictable than simply directing water into a pipe. Many experts now say that the best strategy to manage stormwater is a combination of both gray and green infrastructure. What I've really come to understand is that there is no easy fix to all this. It will take many different solutions working together to manage our sewage and stormwater. But most of all, I think it will take persistence. Because at the end of the day, an issue like this ultimately requires time, money, and a commitment to solving the problem. I really do have hope that if we keep our eye on the prize, maybe, just maybe, we will one day finally stop dumping literal sewage into the water.
Yeah, you too. I think everyone would be pretty happy here if we figured out a solution. You know, every summer there's always a beach or a couple that are on the E. coli list. And if we end up with another heat wave like last summer, well, it's no fun to just sit on the sand and stare at the water, that's for sure. So here's hoping. Selling Russian assets to pay back Ukrainian victims, an ambitious G7 plan to target Russia's wealthy. That's next.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
You didn't have to be too bold to go to the P&E this afternoon. You just needed 20 bucks. 20 bucks and you too could have been part of this big Vulcan mind meld.
Star Trek has a whole philosophy about it that I guess coming to one of these things makes you sort of think about. They think of getting away from personal belongings and improving yourself and going on. And that's what I believe in. And besides, I do need a T-shirt.
Well, they're $60. They're all the ones that are made up like that are all $60. How much did that cost?
$17.
What is it?
It's a model of the Enterprise.
You buy it here?
Yeah.
How much?
25.
How big of a Star Trek fan are you?
Oh, I've watched it since I was a little boy, a little child. Watch every film I can get a hold of, every scrap of information. You can see how far I'm dressed up. That's about as far as I go, you know.
Some say conventions like this are more like an attack of the Romulans.
We're getting our money back.
You already been in, or that's what
We went in and walked right back out. It's awful.
Go get loonies from
I mean, it's like
somebody.
Patrick Stewart, and he shows up once at 5:15 today, once at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and they have a paragraph. Although Patrick will not be signing autographs today, he was gracious enough to pre-sign some beautiful color photos, which are on sale at registration. You just have to pay $15.
There you go, you're all set. These guys may have beamed up, but back inside, the crowd was multiplying, room full of tribbles.
We have a manifest destiny quite clearly to go to the stars. We have to. We've ruined this planet. We have to leave. It's a matter of functional necessity. It's not a matter of science fiction. So this sort of thing helps prepare people for the inevitability of our manifest destiny.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ottawa has announced it's imposing sanctions on more than 200 people in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region who are loyal to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The federal government is also working with G7 allies on legislation that would let governments freeze sanctioned Russian assets, then sell them and use the money to help victims of the war in Ukraine. As Ellen Morrow reports, the toll on those victims continues to mount.
Clearing away the remnants of war from a suburb of Kyiv turned battlefield.
This is Makariv, just 40 minutes outside the capital, occupied by Russian forces at the beginning of the war, who left so much carnage behind. Evan's apartment, home since the early 1980s, was destroyed. I have 3 questions, he says. Where will I live? Where will my family live? And how can I rebuild this? Russian troops left this area weeks ago, but there's little relief here until the war is over. Luty, Ukrainian for fierce, is the commander of volunteer troops in Makariv. Russia wants to destroy Ukraine as an independent country, he says. We have a massive war which is annihilating civilians. Along the highway between here and Kyiv, destruction.
This is the main highway into Kyiv, and right there behind me is a destroyed Russian tank. These remnants of war litter this road. There is so much damage as you drive into the Ukrainian capital.
While the cleanup near Kyiv continues, the fight elsewhere rages on. In Odessa, for the second consecutive day, a crucial bridge was targeted by a Russian missile strike as Russia tries to cut off Ukraine's key supply lines for getting foreign weapons to the east. In Mariupol, there were more Russian strikes at the steel mill where Ukrainian forces are holed up. Katerina and her family managed to escape the city as thousands of civilians remain trapped.
At the first checkpoint, the man there pointed his gun at us and wasn't letting us through until he saw that there was a child with us. It was frightening. I thought that that was it for us.
The family is now living in a shelter with little idea of what comes next. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Kyiv.
In this country, Canadian MPs have voted unanimously to recognize Russia's actions as genocide.
And all those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Motion is carried.
The motion is a strong statement and accounts for acts of rape, murder, and abduction, but it does not call for government action, and it does not involve direct consequences for Putin or his supporters. However, neither the United Nations nor the International Criminal Court have formally labeled Russia's actions as genocide. David Common is in Ukraine for us tonight, looking at the violence and unnecessary loss caused by this war so far. He reports on the devastated communities that many Ukrainians say have been sites of war crimes.
The Russian missile struck right here. You see the crater back in early March, and this was an area that people lived. You can sort of still see the outline of the building. Right now, volunteers from across Ukraine have come, and they're actually by hand. You see carrying away the rubble. So why by hand? Because they believe there is the possibility that people are buried underneath and they would like to find their remains to bring them some dignity. The big question here in Bordyanka is why here? When you look across this area, I mean, just look at these buildings over here and the level of destruction, and that pours out across the entire city, small city. It was originally 14,000, now only about 3,000. Many people have fled to other parts of Ukraine, to outside of the country, because of the level of destruction here. And when I speak about why Bordyanka, it's because there was no military base here. There was no apparent military significance to this area. In fact, it just became a target for some reason by Russian forces who pummeled the area. And the result is what you see, utter destruction, volunteers coming in after the Russian retreat, trying to repair it all. Why they think people may be buried underneath is because of that dog. They found it just today in the basement down those stairs and believe that the people who owned it are buried beneath. David Common, CBC News, Bordyanka, Ukraine.
Not opting out, but opting in. How a city in Quebec is tackling junk mail, but it's not without controversy. How advertisers are fighting back. That's next. And at 6:43, a live look at Science World tonight. If you're bored with the same old weather-wise, I mean, I don't know how you could be with this beautiful sunshine, but you've just been rewarded with a buffet of just about everything. Why Johanna says that mix is here to stay, coming up.
CBC presents Junior TV Club, a half-hour program designed for the younger viewers. Today's program is the final one and will include a film, an interview on baseball, and an item on magic. We're going to begin with the hobby section, and Mr. Ross Harriet is going to talk to Graham Phillips about a model railway. Let's take a look at some of the things Mr. Harriet has brought along with him.
Well, there we've been looking at the finished product in a model railroad. Mr. Harriet's going to tell us how to build up to that. Mr. Harriet, let's start off with the locomotive here. Can we have a look at this little one here? What type is that?
That's a little dockside, used principally in big industrial sidings and places such as that.
Yeah, this one I recognize as being a shunter, isn't
Yes,
it?
that's used, it's a diesel.
Yeah.
And it is used principally in the yards, making and breaking up trains as they're brought in from the main line. And
what is this small one here?
oh, that's a little baby. That's used in small industry, oil refineries, and not so much in logging, but in mining. They use it in mining also.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at the carriages now. This small one here, did you make this by yourself?
Yes, that's they're made up from scratch.
And what are those metal strips on the back?
Well, that's your braces for your trucks to fit in, your bolsters.
By the way, what is this made out of?
Balsa, that's all made out of balsa.
Yeah.
The same with the other one. It's a balsa car also.
And that already has the wheels on the bottom.
Yeah, that's that car is made up by my boy himself. He makes them.
I see.
That's a shay. That's used principally in logging industry.
I notice it's got a side drive on it.
Yes, well, that's the way they're made. That's the type of engine that it is.
Would this be a collector's item? I've never seen many of this type.
Well, it would be, yes. They're beginning to come on the market now, but it is a collector's item, you might say.
Mm-hmm. These sort of bits and pieces, the station hit, do those make them yourself?
No,
or can they be
this is, you could purchase these as they are now. That's already made up.
Mm-hmm.
And the building, that's a partial kit, you might say, and then you use your own imagination and complete it.
Well, I'm afraid it is time to wrap up the show now. And since this is the last hobby show, the hobby section on the show which we'll ever see, I'd like to say that it's been great fun doing it, and now on to our next item.
This has been a CBC Vancouver production.
Junk mail. Cluttering up mailboxes is a frustrating sight for many Canadians, but what to do about it? A community north of Montreal has decided to put a stop to unwanted flyers and promotional material if homeowners don't want them delivered. Sarah Levitt has the story, including a closer look at why it's not happening in other places.
Suzanne Chenin says she eagerly awaits the bag full of flyers every week. The 81-year-old says she relies on them to find out what's on sale. The flyers, known as Publisac in Quebec, used to be automatically delivered to her home in Mirabel, just north of Montreal. Now, though, she has to put this sticker on her door saying yes to the delivery.
We have to find solutions to reduce the amount of paper going to the landfill.
In 2019, the city adopted an opt-in system for the flyers, arguing the environmental impact is just too high. Across Canada, towns and cities are grappling with the same issue. Halifax had originally hoped to do what Mirabel has done. Instead, an opt-out system is now in place.
Legal folks went and had a look at it. They thought that there could be a challenge to the freedom of expression laws with the opt-in.
They weren't entirely wrong. In Mirabel, the flyer distributor Transcontinental sued to have the opt-in system quashed on the principle of free speech.
The justification is that in a free market society, it's important for consumers to have access to information, and advertising is a source of information.
A Quebec Superior Court judge has denied the company's request.
Advertisers have other options apart from this Publisac. They can use social media, they can have billboards. In that context, this is a justified restriction on the freedom of expression.
Mirabel is the first in Quebec to implement the opt-in system, but Montreal has announced it'll do the same by 2023. Transcontinental is appealing the court decision and says it won't deliver in Mirabel anymore. Instead, Canada Post will ensure residents like Chenin who want the flyers get them. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is back. Joe, it was a bit crazy today. It's beautiful outside right now, but I was hit in this crazy hailstorm in Burnaby.
Ah, you got the hailstorm, did you?
I was outside.
Yes. Yeah, well, they were like smaller than pea size, but still they were bouncing off cars and skins. Yeah, I got caught in it too in North Van, Anita. And this has been our story for so much of our spring, these isolated thunderstorms that lead to hail. You get the cumulus, you get the sun. It's been cool. We've got more of that this week. So if you like it, we've got more. If you're ready for something else, we have to wait until long range. Let me take you to the current temperatures where it has been cool. It's just a 10 right now at YVR. Seasonals are already up around 16 based on our 1981 to 2010 averages. So we've been consistently 5 degrees below seasonal the past few weeks on average. Here's a look at the satellite radar, and you can see these sort of pockets of green across Metro Vancouver. I think those are the cumulus clouds being picked up on the radar, and you can see that in the cloud in the satellite as well, sort of pockets of instability. Got to keep the risk in for instability, which is our magic word, meaning potential for hail, for another day. So watch as I take you through the overnight. We've got a bit of cloud cover moving in, winds coming in from the east as we head into the morning hours. Relatively dry, but it's the afternoon. We may see one of those cumulus clouds end up with a few showers. And that's the story for Friday as well. Generally dry, generally sunny, generally cool, but watching for the chance of a stray thunderstorm the next couple of days. That low pressure system hitting the northeast, it is dissipating as we head into the next 24 hours. That snow should end tomorrow night. Prince George, though, look for a snowy mix as we head into Friday morning. But a break between systems for everyone until Saturday morning. That's when that next Pacific system will bring a few showers to Metro Vancouver. Lots of sun across the province, 15 for Kelowna tomorrow. That'll translate to a 22 this weekend for the Okanagan, some of the warmest temperatures we've seen this season, coming with lots of sunshine. Just an 11 for us in Vancouver tomorrow. I think we can bump it up to seasonal almost by the time we hit Saturday and Sunday. Look at that forecast, though. Bit of this, bit of that. Sunshine mixed with cumulus clouds and showers. We're starting to get into that warm-up you can see for the end of the weekend into early next week, but not a huge reversal. And Anita, we now know that La Nina is sticking around, so we might have to get used to cooler than normal, which isn't all bad.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, we've been prepped. You're welcome.
Yeah. It was an advertisement that had in its punchline a group of young musicians, a mother insulating herself from their performance in her car, but not everyone thought it was funny. A quick-fire response from an orchestra in New Brunswick. That's next.
Welcome to underwater hockey in Summerside at Credit Union Place.
Underwater hockey. It's basically hockey, except instead of being on the ice, you're just under the water at the bottom of the deep end. I've been a swimmer forever, and when I was younger, I'd go to swim meets at bigger pools, and they'd have underwater hockey tournaments coming after us, so I saw it, but I never really played it. And then when I started here, I found that we had sticks and a puck, so I thought that would be a fun thing to do.
Something like this is something that no one really does often, so you don't have to start out young, you don't have to be good at it when coming in, like you don't have to have many skills at all.
If they want to come to play, they don't need to bring anything. We'll supply everything that they need. So the puck is like a regular hockey puck size puck, but it's brighter colors, so we have an orange one and a yellow one, so you can see it against the bottom of the pool. And it's quite heavy compared to the other one. So I think it's a steel puck and it's just sort of rubber covered. And then the sticks are just these short little sticks with a little bend in them. It does get your hand pretty close to the puck in the action.
And trying new things like this, it kind of gives you the opportunity to discover new things, make some new friends, like see what you're good at.
It was an adrenaline rush. You're underwater and there's like people all around you, all going for the same puck, and you have to go all the way to the surface of the water. And when you take a breath, you just see arms flying, legs flying, just everyone bobbing up for air, and you have to go back down and hold your breath. And it feels like your lungs are like gonna explode, but it's just so much fun, and I would definitely go again.
Game on! We kind of play until everybody is up at the top of the water and realizes they're too tired and out of breath to go down again.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
After 7 weeks of online voting and eliminations, the search for BC's best small town is coming to a close. Tune in to the early edition on April 29th to find out who will be crowned BC's best small town. And enjoy the very best of choral music and heavenly harmonies with Corleone on May 12th and 13th. Get tickets and learn more about this special performance at corleone.org.
A recent commercial by a car manufacturer, Nissan, showed the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra in a not-so-favorable light. But the young musicians didn't take it lying down and hit back with a creative response.
Like many of the comments that I received, you know, it's too bad that's the message that is conveyed when there's so much positive we could say about youth and talent and performance excellence, you know. I consulted with a number of friends and colleagues, and then struck on this idea.
Have you seen the new Nissan Infiniti ad? Can you imagine? A big company like that couldn't find a youth orchestra to play the music. They should have called us, the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra.
I think the first thing for us to say is we're not against Nissan and Infiniti, not in any way. We wanted to respond in a fun and humorous way. Even though it's tongue-in-cheek, there's still this tired old stereotype of youth and bad music. And so our message here is that our kids have amazing talent. So there's just so much to celebrate. That's the message that we want to convey. And look, by the way, Nissan Infinity, we're here. We're here. If you need a youth orchestra, come and see us.
In our experience, all kids have talent and can shine on any stage, anywhere.
Yeah, wanting to respond in a fun and humorous way, and they absolutely hit the nail on the head. Wouldn't it be great if the company did, in fact, use them in their next ad? A redo of sorts. Well, that is it for our show tonight. Thank you so much for watching CBC Vancouver News. Dan is here at 11, and I'm back tomorrow at 6. Have a wonderful evening.